The following program does not have a normal intro because I was really too busy smoothing other things over to get it done. So, Ori?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neiman, aka Good Lawgic. I have so much to cover. And I don't even know, like under 6 hours to cover. I don't know if I'm going to manage to pack it all in. I'm going to do my best. We're going to just we'll plow through. Sometimes I have a show where I'm just I don't know if I'm going to make it in 2 hours. I don't know if it's going to fill 2 hours. And then I'll have something come at me collaterally from the side. Boom, ow. And just sort of swells. Things swell. Everyone likes it when things swell. So things swell. They swell. Tonight, if something swells, oh my God, it's going to be a problem. Where do we start? I know where I want to start. I want to start with UFC champion fighter, Sean Strickland. A name I had not heard 24 hours ago. Never heard of this guy ever. But oh my God, is he based? So based. So best. So good. I like. He's very nice. He's very good. I like him a lot. You're going to like him too. Check this guy out. Check him out. You're going to like this guy. UFC fighter, Sean Strickland. That is his name, right? Sean Strickland? You all heard him, right? You heard of him? Am I the only one who never heard of him before? You all know, right? You know, right? All right. Well, here's Sean Strickland sitting for an interview. Apparently, he's a UFC fighter, a pretty talented one. So certainly a lot better than I'll ever be.
I'm glad to hear it. It's been great.
Are you Canadian?
I hate the audio quality on this. I hate that the audio quality is awful. Terrible. But you'll figure out what he's saying.
I'm glad to hear it. It's been great.
Are you Canadian?
Of course I am.
Are you part of the fucking opposition? Are you?
I don't know how to phrase that.
You got fucking. Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask you.
Did you vote for Trudeau?
This is where he starts. You vote for Trudeau? Oh yeah. Listen to the answer to that question. Listen to how this reporter answers the question.
I'm not going to say.
And let me tell you something right now. If a man says he's not going to say, if you ask a motherfucker, did you vote for Biden? He's like, well, I'm not going to say. That's none of your business. He voted for fucking Biden.
Sean,
It's funny because it's true. That's why it's funny, because it's true and everyone knows it. Everyone knows. Yeah. So good.
Hey,
Sean, I'm glad you had great experiences.
so this is what I'm talking about, you guys. The enemy of Canada.
Sure.
All right.
That's what it's got to be. It's got to be. We've got a pretty supportive gay and lesbian
Hold
community
on
in
a
the
second.
city.
The family needs me. What? Oh. Well, I guess. I don't know. There you go. You're welcome. Sorry about that. All right. It's kind of my fault. Where was I? Yeah. We'll go back a little bit.
As the enemy of Canada.
Sure.
All right.
That's what it's got to be. It's got to be. We've got a pretty supportive gay and lesbian community in this city. I did want to ask you about something you wrote a couple of years ago. You said, if I had a gay son, I would think I'd...
Oh, look, another reason I'm saying to you, the swamp, you guys, the swamp.
You become a champion, you become a star, and some would say...
Let me ask you something. Are you gay?
I had the chance to
No,
interact with a more diverse...
Are you gay?
Could I get an answer?
Well, I'm asking, this is a part of, are you a gay man?
I'm an ally of the community.
Okay. If you had a son and he was you had a son, he was gay, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want a grandkid?
No problem with it.
Oh man, well, dude, you're a weak fucking man, dude. You're like...
Oh, so... Woo! Go get him, Sean.
Like, you're part of the fucking problem. You elected Justin Trudeau. Like, when he sees the bank accounts, like, you're just fucking pathetic. And the fact that you have no fucking backbone, and has he shut down your fucking country and seized bank accounts, you ask me some stupid shit like that, go fuck yourself. Move the fuck on, man.
Whoa! Whoa! Language. My oldest daughter, whenever we were watching something and someone like used any sort of, she would just call out like that word. She would just call out whatever, everyone just be, so she just call out language. So I think I picked it up from her.
Really answer the question, but I did want to ask also things you said about the trans community. You said this past October when they announced the Bud.
Like, what do you think is going to come out of this question? He just told you GFY. He just told you that. You already got your sound clip. You got your sound clip. He gave you the sound clip that you wanted. But it's like, nah, I got to go in there for some more abuse. Let me ask you about the trans community. Because I'm a gay ally, I'm a trans ally, I'm a queer ally, I'm a plus ally, I'm also a plus ally, I'm the plus ally, I'm the I ally, I'm the A ally, I'm all the allies. I got to ask you about each and every one of them. And this guy, no filter.
Answer the question, but I did want to ask also things you said about the trans community. You said this past October when they announced the Bud Light sponsorship that you'd go so hard on Bud Light in your next fight they'll have to accept me or denounce me when they know what, and will know what they stand for. Are you?
This guy's like that. This Canadian's not that Canadian.
Are you still going to use your fight time to kind of speak on that?
Here's the thing about Bud Light.
It's like, all right, settle in. He's going to weigh in now on Bud Light. Maybe he's going to be in favor of the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing. I don't know. I don't know how he's going to answer this question. It's very hard to tell. It's very mixed. There's a mixed signal I'm getting here from him as to where he probably stands on the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing. Very mixed signal.
Here's the thing about Bud Light. 10 years ago, to be trans was a mental fucking illness. And now all of a sudden people...
This is Sean Strickland. Some of you are asking. Some of you are asking who he is. UFC fighting champ, Sean Strickland.
And now all of a sudden people like you have fucking weaseled your way in the world. You are an infection. You are the definition of weakness. Everything that is wrong with the world is because of fucking you. And the best thing is the world's not buying it. The world's not buying your fucking bullshit you're fucking peddling. The world is not saying, you know what? You're right. Fucking chicks have dicks. The world's not saying that. The world's saying, no, there are two genders. I don't want my kids being taught about, who they could fuck in school. I don't want my kids being taught about, their sexual preference. Like, dude, this guy is the fucking enemy. You want to look at the fucking enemy to our world? It's that motherfucker right there.
That's him. It's Bob. Bob. In case you're wondering who it is, it's Bob. Get him. I know what he's saying, but it's pretty funny. Oh my god, it's so good.
Asking these stupid fucking questions. Sorry, I told the UFC I was being nicer. Lance, am I still doing this? Did I cross any lines? What the fuck? I didn't say the F word.
I didn't say, what the F? I didn't say any F words. Sean, please come on the show.
You just brought this fucking guy in here to piss me off.
That was so good. Oh my god. Everyone get Bob. That schmuck Bob. That was so hilarious. So well done, Sean Strickland. That was great. And it's a perfect transition. Speaking of transitioning, that's a perfect transition to our next story. It's like the transition. It's the mother of all transitions to our story. Okay, so I heard about this last week when I was on Layback Law. It used to be Layback News. Some of you might be wondering. You're saying to yourself, what's Layback Law? Well, when I showed up at Layback News last week, I found out it was Layback Law, and I'm going to tell you something. personally, ever since the first of this year, it's been laid back law. That's like a new name thing that's happening. I think it's the first year, but it's definitely now laid back law, which was once laid back news, hosted by Eric Hunley. I appear on there every Friday, almost without fail. Almost without fail. You can pretty reliably find me there on a Friday afternoon at 12 o'clock Eastern time. And it always was called Laid Back News. And I was like, I don't really like the name because I'm not really, I mean, I guess I'm talking about the news, but I'm really looking at the whole law part of things. And it's a bunch of lawyers. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And Eric finally came around. I never said that to him, but of his own volition, without, maybe that just was a thought that came into my brain that sort of went into the ether and finally traversed the 300 miles from here to Virginia and basically convinced them that, hey, I think it makes sense to switch this over to laid back law because that's what it is now. So there you go. Laid back law tomorrow at noon with Eric Hunley and a panel of other based attorneys. I highly recommend you check it out. But speaking of mother all transitions, because that part of it has nothing to do with transitioning, but it was there last week when I was on laid back law when Nate, the lawyer, brought up this case here that I meant to get to at some point this week. And it took me all week to get here, but here we are. You just DM me a new 42-second Strickland clip from today. I appreciate that. I'm going to try and check it out. Maybe like a little bit later in the show. Thank you, brother. Also, I missed this. T-Rex says, Joe, have you seen the thing about Texas and Biden administration where Texas kicked the feds out of the border using National Guard and Biden administration threatened $5,000 fine and or 3 years of jail for the troops? I saw that I covered the legal battle that's going on there in court between the Biden administration and state of Texas. That I've seen. I didn't see specifically the Biden administration's threat. Am I good enough? I think I'm good enough on that for now. So I've covered that. I've covered that here. The fight that's going on, but as far as that specific threat, I don't recall knowing about that. My transition was as ruined as Savannah Ryan Williams. Poor Savannah. Savannah's ruined. Yeah. All right. Maybe I'm heartless. Maybe I'm cruel. I'm joking about a person who is no longer amongst us. Savannah Ryan Williams. Man charged with murder after transgender woman was shot point blank near Lake Street. When they say transgender woman, chances are very, very high they're talking about a man who now is identifying as a transgender woman, or at least at a certain point did before their lives were cut short, specifically with Bible vengeance. I would say that because the shooter's name was Damarean Kaylon Bible. Gunshot residue on victim's sweatshirt suggested gunfire from close range, according to the charges. A man charged in the fatal shooting last week. This is all going back a couple months. I had missed this story, but I think it requires some reflection from us as to exactly what is like where morality lies on this sort of thing. So a man charged in a fatal shooting last week near Lake Street said he shot the victim point blank. He admits that he shot him point blank after a sex act, according to newly filed charges. Hennepin County Attorney's Office. Hennepin, I'm pretty sure that's the same county, my recollection. That's the same county as Mr. George Floyd died. So the Hennepin County Attorney's Office on Tuesday charged Damarean Kaylon Bible, 25, with second-degree murder in connection to the shooting of Savannah Ryan Williams, 38, of St. Paul. Star Tribune formally identified Williams, who was transgender by her legal name provided by the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office, and was very embarrassed by that, and got all sorts of transphobe claims. Bible was arrested and booked into jail Friday. An attorney is not yet listed. If Bible remains jailed, I'm sure he's got an attorney by now. His first court appearance was Wednesday. According to charges based on surveillance footage, Williams was left for dead, and it was hours before her Williams. I'm going to avoid the whole pronoun issue here because I like sharing truth. It was hours before Williams' body was discovered on November 29th. Officers responded around 9 a.m. to report of a person not breathing in the courtyard of 3023 4th Avenue South. Surveillance video from nearby buildings shows Williams and Bible walking toward the crime scene at 5 a.m. Bible left alone at 5:45 a.m. when witnesses reported hearing gunshot from the area. Witnesses also say they saw a man Tom walking north from the crime scene along 4th Avenue toward Lake Street. Video then showed Bible head to the Lake Street Light Rail Station, where he rode a train downtown and exited at the Nicollet 5th Street Station. He walked south to an apartment building in 95 South 10th Street. Investigators went there, showed a photograph of Bible to building management to identify the suspect. Bible was arrested as he left the apartment. Bible initially denied being involved, but when shown video evidence, he admitted to shooting Williams. Never a good move. Never a good move. Always ask for a lawyer. But the admission's there, purportedly. Bible told investigators that he walked past Williams, who was sitting at a bus shelter on Lake Street. He said that Williams asked if he wanted sex, and they went to the nearby courtyard. Bible said he had a 9mm handgun in his pocket, and he began to feel suspicious of Williams. After the sexual act, he shot her. He called his parents from jail. In one conversation with his dad, Bible admitted to killing someone. Bible in the call said that while he felt sorry and wasn't God, he had to do it. Search warrant for his apartment came up with a 9mm polymer 80 handgun with no serial number, 22 caliber rifle. Investigators also recovered shoes, clothing he wore during the murder, as seen in surveillance video. Bible was also charged Tuesday with first-degree aggravated robbery in connection with an attack November 5th on Nicollet Mall. In that case, the victim flagged down police and said Bible pulled a black semi-automatic handgun on him when asked to empty his pockets. Why are they telling us about this? Why are they telling us about this? Why are they telling us about this aggravated robbery? Because I got to tell you something. I saw this and I'm like, why is this included here? So this supposedly, so he was charged with a crime somewhere, of violent crime. I understand that. I'll tell you right now, this is a black defendant. If this was a white person that he had shot, and they were telling this story over, you would never hear about this other charge that happened a month earlier. You just wouldn't hear about it. It just wouldn't be in the story. Because it's a trans victim. To me, it seems pretty apparent. Because it's a trans victim, that's why all of a sudden we're getting like the rap sheet. Not even rap sheet. It's not even a rap sheet. The allegations of another crime, which Bible's supposed to be considered innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But we're just going to throw this out to the crowd out there, just so you should know what a terrible human being he is. Well, this raises interesting questions that I want to discuss with all of you. I want to get your thoughts. I want to get your feedback. I want you to talk to me. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me what's on your mind here. Okay, so now, supposedly, as this story has unfolded, this is what we have learned. To give a little further detail to this, a little fleshing out of this whole thing, pardon the pun. Apparently, so Williams offered to take some money in exchange for engaging in certain types of pleasuring acts, which Bible said, okay, sure, let's do it. And that after everything's finishing, Bible realized that this was not the woman of his dreams. Quite the contrary, it was not a woman at all. Got very angry, shot Williams, killing Williams after feeling duped for engaging in, and that's why calling up dad and saying, yeah, I know I'm not God, but I had to do it. I had to do it. Because he realized that basically he was engaging in a sexual act with a transgender woman, someone who was an XY, someone who had way too many Y chromosomes for his liking. So my question is, then the question becomes, now initially apparently they were going to try charging him with robbery also, and maybe felony murder because he's looking to commit a robbery, but that's hard to do because it's hard to know if that's a robbery. If it's like $50 that he's taking back, he took back the money that he gave Williams. It's not really felony murder because it wouldn't be a felony because it's $50. Stealing $50 from someone is not going to be a felony. That's going to be a misdemeanor, almost certainly. I don't know. I haven't checked out the statutes in Minneapolis, but I'm in Minnesota, I'm fairly certain it's likely that if something under $100, it's not going to be considered a felony, even a low-level felony. That's just my gut. My gut says that. Anyway, bottom line is this. I want to get your thoughts. What do you guys think? So now, there's a concept in the law. The question is this an assault by Williams? If a transgender woman successfully tricks someone into thinking that they are a woman, and the person, let's assume that this person is strictly heterosexual, that person gets duped into engaging in sex with a transgender, with a man who's transitioned into becoming a woman. Is that an assault? Put yourself in the position of Mr. Bible here. So, assuming there was deception here, Uncle's Aunt Sam to get penicillin jab to the rump. I don't even know what that means in this context. You think it is an assault? Yes. Let me see what Rummel's saying. Oh my. Krabby Girl says, now I'm dying to know what Bob looks like compared to the picture in my I gotta give you one of these. 20. Also, Dan, now the voices in my head are arguing. All right. Yeah. So, question is, okay. There's a concept in fraud and the inducement. When you talk about these types of relationships, there's a distinction between fraud and inducement versus fraud and the act. Now, fraud and inducement, if someone lies to you, not about their, let's just put gender aside, okay? Ladies, all right? You go to a bar, you meet a man, and he seems like the dude of your dreams. And you take him home, and you do whatever you want, whatever it is, you do your business with the man. And part of this whole man of your dreams is that he convinces you that he is this big time surgeon. And then after the fact, you find out that he's homeless. Never went to med school, didn't know anything. He's just a really good con man. You figure that out like after he finishes doing his business. Is that fraud? Is that something that, you can basically say, you induced me into doing something I never would have done with a homeless person, and there's fraud. So the law is pretty clear on this, that there's a concept of fraud in the inducement, which means that you cannot hold him liable for fraud. If he successfully deceives you to induce you to engage in an act that you otherwise would not engage in, there's no assault there. There's no anything that's happening there, because we say that fraud in the inducement is not considered fraud. Now, in stark contrast, let's distinguish that. Same story, okay? Same story. Ladies, you go to a bar. You're sitting there at the bar. You meet the man of your dreams. And so you take him back to your place. And he starts engaging in all sorts of kinky sort of foreplay with you. Pulls out a blindfold. Covers your eyes up. And then he does his business with you. And then when the blindfold comes off, turns out that while you were blindfolded, he brought in his friend Bob, who's an interviewer of UFC fighting champions, who's a cancer and needs to destroy the world. And you weren't actually with this gentleman the entire time. You were with Bob and never even knew it because you were too busy being blindfolded. Now, that is a situation. Is there an assault there? Answer, yes. Why is that? No, it's also, it seems like the same kind of fraud. Because there we say it's not fraud in the inducement, it's fraud in fact. Now you've basically engaged in, there was a deception which led you think that it's man of your dreams, Sean Strickland, who's engaging you, and it turns out it's just the stupid reporter there asking all sorts of questions, trying to probe Sean and find out whether or not he's transphobic, and worse than that, Canadian. And now that's the person who touched you in ways that are otherwise are pretty offensive. So we say that that's not fraud in the inducement, that's actual fraud, and that is assault. Now, question here. If a trans woman successfully manages to convince a John, she's a trans woman, is sells bodily fluid extraction for a living, and now manages to convince you that they are a biological woman. You engage in the entire act and then find out after the fact that there's very little female biology that was going on there from birth, and that this was actually someone who was came out of the womb looking a lot more like you than you realized. So now the question is that fraud in the inducement or is that fraud in fact? What is it? So I gave you a little legal lesson, your little legal background. And the question is that fraud in the inducement or is that fraud in fact? You like that, huh? You like that? It's a family show. It's a family show. Bodily fluid extraction salesman. It's a family show. Hey, I mentioned you. I mentioned you at the start. You should scroll back. I spent like 5 minutes pitching to everyone, Eric. I was pitching to them new laid back law. I was going on and on about how my brainwaves went into the ether and took like a year to finally hit you and get you to change laid back news into laid back law, and how impressed I was that I never said it to you, right? You can verify I never said it to you, but you just came up with laid back law, which is what I thought it always should be. I always felt weird being on laid back news. I'm like, I don't know that any of us really cover news. I sort of talk about things that are going on, but yeah. And I credited you that last week when I was on with Nate, that Nate brought this up, and I was like, this is a great topic. I really like this. How do you determine this with them is dead? What do you mean, how would you determine this? We know what happens. Let's assume that there's no argument about factually what went down. You know, if he's reacting like that after the fact, let's assume that while he's engaging, while Mr. Bible here was engaging before he engaged in biblical vengeance, that he was under the full impression that Savannah Ryan Williams was a natural born woman. Let's take that as a given. Not that he was like, oh, I'm totally fine with it, and then felt regret after the bodily fluids have been successfully extracted. That it was not a case of regret after the fact, but it was more a matter of shock at learning the truth of what he had just done after the fact that motivated Mr. Bible to unload his pistol into Savannah Ryan Williams. Notice how carefully I'm avoiding pronouns just because I can't stand bending the knee to that. So I'm trying to see what you guys think about this. So it would have been the inducement. Fraud and inducement making you think that you're having real sex with a woman. Okay. You asked your cousin Brad, and he got 131 on his LSAT. Let me explain something to you, Brad. Brad Pitt asked his cousin Brad. Unbreaded. Let me explain something to you. You don't learn anything about the law when you're taking the LSATs. You don't know anything about the law when you're taking the LSATs. No one knows anything. That's to get into law school. It's not, you don't have to study law to get into law school. So, yeah, it does seem like an offensive bodily contact. I mean, just so I'll tell you this, my perspective on it, not Bob, definitely not Bob Krabby T, not Bob. Yeah. So my question is, my perspective, and people were saying I was straddling the fence, but I really wasn't, is, someone here mentioned this fraud in the inducement. And that's definitely there. I mean, you can't dispute that there's fraud in the inducement. But if you're Mr. Bible, you don't say there's fraud in the inducement. You don't care about that part of it. But yeah, there is fraud in the inducement. You can't deny that. He never would have done it if not for the fact that there was fraud in inducement, right? He was induced into thinking that this was a double X chromosomed individual. So there's definitely fraud in the inducement. Question being, though, there can also be fraud in fact. Because it's not just that, because in the moment there, right, he thinks he's engaging with someone who is Y chromosome free. I mean, that's so. It's kind of like this to me, it's like, it's almost like, yeah, I got induced because I thought you were a woman, but like now when I'm being touched by someone, it's like, I think that this someone was born with lady parts. So like, it's not, that's like, you wouldn't allow someone, I don't know. I'm sort of torn about this. Would that not be true? Let's say in front of the inducement with the homeless person, and the entire time that you're engaging with that homeless person, you sort of think that it's someone who's not homeless, same person. On the other hand, it's almost like you sort of think that this is the person themselves is something that they're not. It's not just like, you're inducing me by convincing me of something. I think that you are something. It's not a matter of like trappings around you, but I think you're X. It's almost like, imagine if we try to take the transsexuality part out of this, which, by the way, surprise, surprise, they're trying to charge him with a hate crime now, saying that this is, this was transphobia, which that should horrify every one of you. It should. Because now he's facing a hate crime. He could be facing federal crimes. He'd be facing all sorts of things, right? Racism. It's terrifying. It's very terrifying. Let me share this. Potentially being charged with a hate crime. Lawmakers and LGBTQ plus AIII activists call for, why don't they just call plus? It's the plus community. That way we can cover LGBT, right? And Q. Call for trans women killing to be prosecuted as hate crime. Lawmakers and the alphabet community are calling for a stop to anti-trans violence after a transgender woman was shot and killed in Minneapolis. Last week, 38-year-old Savannah Ryan Williams shot and killed in Minneapolis, Lake Street. Back in February, another transgender woman, this was February last year, was brutally beaten in the same area. Family members of Williams, friends, and lawmakers gathered Thursday morning to call for a stop to anti-trans violence. But here's the thing. It's stop assaulting people. Stop assaulting people. Quote, we're so sad that she's gone and heartbroken, a family member said at Thursday news conference. Savannah was outgoing, very outspoken, and lit up every room that she walked in. No doubt. On November 29th, Minneapolis police responded to an early morning shots fired call near 4th Avenue South and Lake Street. Court documents said 25-year-old Damarean Kaylon Bible admitted shooting Williams in the head. Investigators said he told police she approached him for a sexual encounter and began to feel suspicious, and after the act shot and killed her. Regardless of what we do to support ourselves in the world, that is actually not built for us. That doesn't mean that we should get murdered for it. No, you shouldn't get murdered for it. Unless... I'm just kidding. Look, you can't defend... I want to be clear about something here before I go any further. You can't defend the murder. Like, there's murder. This is the only time that you're able to engage in you have justifiability to use lethal force is if you're in imminent in danger of lethal of death or serious injury. That's the only time you have your self-defense. So he's going to prison. This guy Bible's going to prison. But the question is whether if it's fraud, you can start coming, if it's recognized as being fraud, let's face it, it's Minneapolis. Chances can be recognized as there being some sort of fraud rather than, no, you got what you paid for. The likelihood of there reaching a finding along those lines seems kind of slim based on the level of wokeness that you have in the Great White North. However, I'm simply talking like morally here. Just trying to figure out if we weren't twisted into thinking that like there's 7 million genders, or I guess 8 billion, considering that there's 8 billion people and everyone has their own gender. But if we were living in a 2-gender world and recognizing that you're either a man, you're a woman, it doesn't matter what parts you slap onto yourself. At the end of the day, the question is now, is this an assault? And it's not an assault if it's, I'm saying there's an assault, the encounter. Is there assault from the transgender individual to the John? That's really the question that I'm interested in. Because then if there's an assault, there's sort of like more justification. You can understand there being a manslaughter type of thing, as opposed to, if we don't look at it as being assault, it's more of a murder. 2, murder 1. I mean, they have over there, let me recall, because Derek Chauvin trial, I think it could be like murder 2. So then the question is if this is an assault or not. And that really boils down to whether this is fraud inducement or fraud in fact. And there's definitely fraud inducement, but you can have fraud inducement and fraud in fact. And the question is whether it's fraud in fact. I'm very torn on this. That's why I want to get your thoughts. That's where I'm at. I lean toward there being fraud in fact. Last week, I definitely leaned toward it. I'm more on the fence now on it. How would you determine this with got that agent says, this reminds me of Nate's video from earlier today. He did this today? A man impersonated his twin to sleep with twin's girlfriend. That's evil and should be assault. In Mr. Bible's case, buyer beware, look before you leap. But that's fraud and inducement. But I agree with you. By the way, it's not just assault. It's rape. That's what it is. That's what it is. This is a sick individual. It's a sick individual. So what's the difference there? Think about that. In that case, the girlfriend was definitely fraudulently induced, and it's also fraud in fact, because it's a different person that they think that they're having. That's a different human being. So this is not a different human being, but it's a different gender. It's a thin line. This is a thin line. The girlfriend case is definitely fraud. Because there it's a different human being. Here it's the same human being. You think that human being is X when really it's Y. Literally. I don't know. It feels like fraud to me. Joe, I was in a grocery store. I saw a hot chick. I went to the dairy section and knew it was a guy. Okay. All right. Just wait till there are robots walking amongst us. Had he found the bonus bits mid-act and immediately hit the off switch, I defended. This is great. Deadly force is allowed to stop. Great. It's not implied that it was in the middle. That's a really interesting question you're asking. Let's assume it was in the middle. So in that case, there's an assault that's happening there and you're defending yourself from the assault. Doesn't seem like the assault is causing risk of death or serious bodily harm. So that doesn't give justification to use lethal force, which is what he clearly used. So if someone punches you in the arm, that's an assault. That doesn't give you justification for pulling out a knife and stabbing him in the chest. Because you can't use lethal force. You can self-defend, but you're not allowed to use lethal force with self-defense unless you're at risk of death or serious bodily injury. So it doesn't seem like, even if it was in the middle of coitus, I don't think that anyone could justifiably claim that you're at risk of death or imminent lethal serious bodily harm. The other thing that we could talk about is in California, there's actually a law which says that if you, which I think, I'm not sure if the law was repealed or not, but there was basically there was a law that basically like was talking about that if you have an STD and you don't tell your partner about it, you know you have an STD and you don't tell your partner about it, that can be I think it's a civil penalty, not a criminal penalty, which comes with that. These are interesting questions. All right. Anyway, got a whole bunch of stories I want to share with you. Whole bunch of stories. I just thought it was an interesting case. Brecknick says, Joe, every time you say Mr. Bible, I think you're talking about me. Very confusing. I didn't know that your name was Mr. Bible. Hello, BNB. I thought your last name was Nichols. Mr. Bible. I don't know. Okay. I would argue very strongly that it's fraud, in fact, but I can see someone fairly come to the conclusion that it's merely fraud and inducement. If a judge came to the conclusion it's merely fraud and inducement, I would not say that that's a twisted finding. I think this is close enough to me. I'd want to research more on the issue, honestly. All right, bunch of stories I need to cover with you. First and foremost, in building in significance. So, first and foremost, I want to share this with you. This was what I woke up to this morning. One of the first things I woke up to this morning. I thought this was interesting. Trump vows to never allow a central bank digital currency. This is a really important thing because if we never have a central bank currency, but he said this would be a dangerous threat to freedom. I'll stop it from coming to America. Also, I'm going to put in place strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you for your political beliefs. That will never happen while I'm your president, Trump told the crowd in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So Trump's comments came hours after Representative Jim Jordan revealed that federal agencies have been flagging financial transactions using politically sensitive words, such as MAGA and Trump. And yet another egregious example of the establishment targeting political rivals. It's amazing. It's amazing. As we reported for years, CBDCs touted by globalists such as the French Central Bank Deputy Governor Denis Beau. Even Fed governors know this way lies danger. In thinking about the implications of CBDC and privacy, we must also consider the central role that money plays in our daily lives and the risk that a CBDC would provide not only a window into, but potentially an impediment to the freedom Americans enjoy in choosing how money resources are used and invested. CBDC are part of a broader war on cash. A cashless society is sold on the promise of providing a safe, convenient, and more secure alternative to physical cash. We're also told it will help stop dangerous criminals who like the intractability of cash, but there's a darker side, the promise of control. The elimination of cash creates potential for the government to track and control consumer spending. Digital economies also make for an easier set for central banks to engage in manipulative monetary policies such as negative interest rates. Negative interest rates. I didn't even think of that one. My God. Can you imagine negative interest rates? So that would be that if you borrow money, you pay back less? The hell are negative interest rates? Markets starting to bet on negative interest rates. They are, after all, the next logical step. What the hell are they? Presently, there are trillions of dollars of bonds throughout the world with negative interest rates. That is an unprecedented turn of events and one that has many non-professional investors confused. Savers are understandably puzzled as to how it's possible bonds to carry negative interest rates. After all, an intelligent person really lend $1,000 someone only pay back $950 a year from now? Wow. You know why you would do that? Economists struggle with taking it as a given. People prefer current consumption of the promised equivalent amount of consumption at some specified date in the distant future. So why are we having negative yield? Who's buying these securities? The answer is that they're being purchased by various central banks using a new fiat money created with the express purpose of decreasing their yields. Central banks have the luxury of legally and effortlessly creating new money, are not much concerned with the matter of whether bond prices are too high to make them a prudent investment. Rather, they report to be actively managing interest rates for macroeconomic reasons, such as to stimulate growth, encourage employment, and ensure that inflation is near its long-term target. So money printing central bank having no profit or loss concerns would not hesitate to buy such a security. What in the hell? So basically, we're given an opportunity to manipulate money and interest rates. My God. How horrifying. Well, I will tell you this. Sorry, I didn't mean to go to that one. I will tell you this. If, in fact, we could find some sort of guarantees that we would not have a ever have to worry about CBDC, that would open up the possibility that we could talk about something you probably never heard of before called HR 25. You probably never heard of HR 25. Let me tell you, I've never read HR 25. But HR 25, if we can... Oh, stop it. Stop it. You can stop on by. I'll send you a link if you want to stop on. No pressure, though. I haven't seen you in a while. So. Oh, my. No. Thank you. As soon as I offer to bring in Branko, all of a sudden Jenny drops a fitty on me. Drops a fitty on me. A second. So, thank you very much. Does the exchange of money have any relevance? What do you mean exchange of money? Joe, go to Fed now. What the heck is Fed now? They can basically subsidize individuals' business or behaviors, get the jab, and have a negative car loan. Yeah, they could give anyone whatever money they want to give them. Seriously, they can give them whatever levels of money they want to give them. That's ridiculous. It's so stupid. My God, CBDC would destroy our society in like a heartbreak. Negative interest rates to inflate the value of money borrowed. Also, go MAGA, Vivek, and Trump. Also, did you live today? Get some. Shut up. Sorry. HR 26 is better. HR 25 is crap compared to. How you been, Andrew?
I'm doing fine, but I think we both might regret this. But we'll see what happens.
Why is it? Are you like on gummies or something right now? Like,
no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Just got out of the hot tub. I'm a little post-coital.
You're a little post-coital, you said?
I'm a little. What? What are you trying to say, Joe?
I don't know what the heck you just said. I literally heard you say I'm a little post-coital, and I was just like, did you really just say that?
I don't know where that's coming from, Joe. You're just. So, how are things?
Things are great. I don't know if they're as great as they are for you, but they're pretty great. Pretty great. How are things with you?
I've been fortunate. I've been avoiding all the kind of Trump crazy court drama, but I've been watching you on your channel, not closely because you do it a lot of hours of the day. But I've been watching you cover all that stuff closely, and fair winds, brother. I hope it's proving fruitful. I imagine it is. It's nothing but drama. It seems like
nothing. Speaking of nothing but drama, I'll share something. I'll share a tidbit with you that I've not yet shared with my audience. Roughly 2 months ago, I applied for a press badge after I was thrown out of court for using a phone while Trump was testifying, and I was arguing that I'm an attorney because I was watching Judge Enrogan's trial, and Trump was testifying in the fraud case, the civil fraud case that was brought against him by Letitia James. So, and I was outraged that they'll allow the press. They say they have concerns about attorneys using their phone in the courtroom because we might be recording something. But if you're a member of the press, you can use your phone in the courtroom. So I was like, so you don't trust your officers of the court, but these randos who are walking through here because they have a stupid press badge, them you trust to follow court law rules. I just want to understand how this works. So, and that was basically what they said. So I was like, hell with it. I'm going to see if I can get myself a press badge. Well, sure enough, I got approved. Little old me, I'm a member of the press. And on Monday morning, I'm booked to pick it up at 9:45 in the morning. And at 10 o'clock, I'm heading on over to watch Trump testify in the E. Jean Carroll case.
Imagine a member of the press having more authority in a courtroom than an officer of the court.
Isn't that humiliating? Isn't that? I sent a nasty.
I mean, we're actually subject to sanction.
Yeah.
Journalists aren't.
Like, look, you can. I'll tell you this much. Yeah, I'm going to become part of the fake news now. So, I mean, think of how humiliating that is. That there's an assumption that the lying freaking media is more trustworthy on following court procedure than the officer of a court. I mean,
who's never taken an oath to anything.
Right? They've never taken an oath to anything. I'm subject to sanctions if I do anything wrong. And it's like I'm a New York lawyer. It's a New York courtroom. It's not even like it's a different jurisdiction. Like this is my backyard. Like the one place I would never screw up is following an express court order.
This is Joe's house.
Yeah, it is. It is. Anyway, so yeah. So I am going to become. I'll flash a picture of my press badge when I pick it up. But I'll tell you that.
Hey, I see Ron Coleman in the comments. Sorry to interrupt. We'll circle back to your press badge in a moment.
Well,
Ron, I just learned today, I think, that he turned 60. Is that true? I thought I was much older than Ron.
Well, I thought you're older than 60.
He's right. That's what everyone thinks. Because of my lack of self-control, obviously.
If you did, Ron, I'm just gonna say happy birthday. 60.
Love you, Ron. Happy birthday.
60 is a big one. It's like it's a big deal. So yeah, so I am going to be doing that. I'm going to be covering that drama on Monday. I'm actually very, very excited about that. But Yeah, there's a lot going on there. In fact, this leads me to my next story. Did you hear who Don Jr. said that they're considering for VP?
No, but is it Vivek? Vivek? How do you say his name? Vivek Rashama Mom.
It's pronounced Vivek.
Vivek. Okay, I don't know. Sorry, not trying to be offensive. I just don't know.
No, that's okay. That's okay. No, they actually are saying that the guy they're considering is this dude. Donald Trump Jr. says Tucker Carlson is certainly a contender for VP. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
So I've actually met Donald Trump Jr.
Have you?
Yeah, at an NRA annual meeting because he's a gun hunter guy. Only for a moment, just to shake hands. But yeah, I would not be seeking out Donald Trump Jr. for any serious political advice. He's just
well, okay, fine, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have inside dope as to what's going on.
No, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have any inside dope about anything. Don't worry about it.
So you think that it's all just a way to create buzz by saying, "Ooh, maybe he'll get Trump." He'll get.
I'm not trying to be reassuring because if he doesn't have inside dope, then who's making the decision? Donald Trump. And listen, if Donald Trump's a nominee, I'm voting for Donald Trump. No question about it. Don't worry about it. But let's not pretend that Donald Trump is like the super most reliable conservative politician we've ever seen on the face of the earth.
No,
I mean he's just better than the alternative.
Pretty much any alternative right now. But it's also, I mean, for me personally, I feel as if I have no choice. I love the work he did as president. Don't get me wrong. I mean, most of the work, certainly coming into COVID period, I thought that he was phenomenal, and I still would rank him. What?
The first 2 years, Joe, were awesome.
Well, I think year three was great too. I mean, it was really year 4 that things went downhill.
Once COVID hit, it changed. But I don't blame him for COVID because I think COVID was like a tsunami of public terror. And I don't think any president could simply have stood up and said, you know what, everyone in America who's been terrorized by the media and the CDC and the World Health Organization to believe that this is a death virus that's going to kill everyone and your children and your grandparents. Donald Trump, are going to stand up and say, no, we're just going to go about our business. He would have been impeached and thrown out of office.
Oh, I think so.
So when all these people I see saying now, well, Trump gave us up to COVID. I don't think any president could have resisted that tsunami of terror. Sorry.
It was something we had never. It's something we had never ever. No president ever had to deal with that.
You could ask him to stand in front of a train, but he's just going to get run over by the train. So what purpose does that serve?
But that still doesn't give him complete wash because despite seeing how terrible Fauci was for 8 months,
we didn't know that, right? But we didn't know that for months and months.
By the time he's leaving office and he's still praising Fauci, that's when by that point many of us had seen through Fauci,
right? But by then we know he's not a man of principle, right? I'm just talking about how everything got put in
the first 6. I agree with you.
If Ron DeSantis had been president, he would have had no more resistance to the COVID policies than Trump had.
Right. So, and that tsunami, by the way, people, the timing of it, how it led right into the Floyd riots, and everything, and the chaos that ensued from there, and then the ridiculous changes in voting laws. There was just it was very well orchestrated to decimate him politically. And I mean, I shared with someone because people forget. If you look at his State of the Union speech from January 2020, the country was never better, like never. And I'm talking about for everyone. And he's sitting there, and Nancy Pelosi is ripping up his speech because she's so frustrated. She's so frustrated with the fact that that unemployment rates for the Black community are an all-time low, for the Hispanic community all-time low, for women all-time low, and he's just going and everything is just going surge. America is completely surging, and that's how desperate they were to take him out. Was they basically?
I'll tell you a personal story. So I had one of my children became an adult right at that time, and I told them, I said, listen, go out and get a job right fucking now. Get a job right fucking now, because these times of economic prosperity, they go away with the snap of a finger. I lived through prosperity under Reagan. Before that, I was under Carter. After that, I was under Clinton when the financial markets collapsed. I said, when these windows of opportunity occur, you have to seize them by the throat and get a job and get security, because they do not last. The Democrats will come in here and F this up every goddamn time. And then we'll have 4, 5, 6 years of destitution where people will be suffering. And then if you're lucky, you'll have another couple of years of opportunity where you can get another job. But these first 2 years when Trump is in office, daughter, grab that job right now by the throat.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear?
She didn't listen.
Of course not. Of course not. That's crazy old man pop talk now. So, but did you hear Javier Milei's speech?
I haven't bookmarked, but I haven't heard it yet. No. You do a whole show on that, Joe. I did do a show.
Dude.
Oh, sorry.
Last night, I actually called my show the greatest speech on the internet. And I mean, and it is. It was the most amazing. It was just the fact that he gave that speech at the WEF, at the World Economic Forum, where he's bashing socialism, and he really drew home the point. He didn't phrase this part that I sort of.
You should recite it. You should recite it in
Spanish. I should learn Spanish and recite it.
No,
they
have a AI.
I know.
Like I want to hear it in the voice of a northern New Jersey guy wearing a yarmulke.
I'll take off the hat, put on the yarmulke, and just start reading it. It was absolutely epic, and yeah, that's why I spent all night last night just raving about it. And the fact that he's introduced by Klaus Schwab before in giving that speech, it's just the whole thing to me was just amazing. And one of the things I realized when I was watching it that I shared with my audience last night, and I brought this up because you were talking about Democrats destroying economies, and it's really their socialist, policy.
It's actually their purpose, by the way. That's their purpose. It's intentional. It's not.
What I pointed out was that socialism causes impoverishment of society, and that is not a failing of socialism. No. That's right. A feature.
It's a feature. It's not a glitch.
It's a feature. It is definitely a feature. And they rely on useful idiots and weaponizing their emotion into making them think like, oh, don't you care? Why are you so greedy? Why do billionaires need all that money while people are starving? And, the terrors of capitalism. And he points out that he's like 200 years ago, before there was capitalism, 95% of the world was impoverished. And because of capitalism, today, we have many more people. He said for the history of the world, he goes to the history of the world. He's like,
nobody's impoverished today. I mean, literally, unless you're living under a dictatorship.
Today, it's 5% of the world is living in poverty. He goes, that is all capitalism. From the year 0 to the year 1800, there's no growth, zero growth. And over the last 200 years, we've had growth by an exponential of 15 times.
Do the chart, Joe. The chart looks like the chart looks like this.
It's a hockey stick. It's a hockey stick. Yeah, it really is. So and he points that out, and he said it's all. And these people who are arguing for socialism, that he explains how the last century that Argentina has been living under socialism and the destruction it's wreaked on his society, where it basically brought them down from being like one of the top economies in the world and a rich country into being ranked 140th in the world. So the dude is based, and he's brilliant. And just listening to him go on and on last night. But when you were talking about how democratic policies are so impoverishing, But
they're so effective, Joe. I mean, there was a time when Detroit was the 4th major city in the world. The 4th most productive,
is it really?
Profitable, wealthy city in the world. And what does Detroit look like now? Completely abandoned landscape. It looks like Rome 500 years after the fall. A complete devastation of a city that was the 4th world-class city in the world. That's how effective these leftist policies are at destroying value. That's actually what they're gifted at. Of course, they can't create value, but they destroy value very efficiently.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, so I highly recommend you check it out. But what I saw that really thrilled me, I'm not going to bring it up here. But Elon Musk, he put up a meme today of a dude engaging in coitus while having a laptop on his belly, and there's a girl doing what
I saw it. Yeah.
He's got a laptop on his belly.
I screen captured it. You want me to share it?
It's there's a family show, so but that
Well,
he's
you can't see anything, Joe.
yeah, no, you see too much. So, but that's what he shared a picture of a guy watching Javier Milei speak on his laptop while engaging in coitus with the caption that he put in there, "So hot." And I was like, oh, good. Elon enjoyed the speech as well. I'm glad he enjoyed it too. So no, I'm not sharing it. I'm not doing it. I know that my restrictions are off, but there's still boundaries. There's still guardrails. There are still guardrails. Anyway, so I had a few other stories that I wanted to get to here, but I'll be happy to share them with you because one of them was this thing about Don Jr. saying that he's talking about, they're thinking about Tucker Carlson, and I wanted to get thoughts from you. Do you think Tucker, and from my audience as well, what do you guys think about Tucker as VP? Do you think he would be a good VP?
Are you asking me?
Oh yeah.
No, I don't think he would be. I think he's much better in the role he's in, which is a public commentator on politics. I think he has a much more influence and impact on society. I think that's where he should stay. I think, with the exception of Donald Trump, politics is mostly, I hate to say it, best served by the people who know how to pull the levers of politics. And frankly, I think even Trump's experience demonstrates that. It's very difficult for someone to come in from the outside and effectively pull the levers of politics for change, because you're fighting against the whole body politic, this octopus that is the existing political structure, that even when the Republicans, they don't really want change. They're comfortable with the way things are. They're profiting from the way things are. They don't want disruption. They don't want change as much as they might talk about change. They're happy to be the loyal opposition and be espousing for change all the time. But listen, these just like the Democrats that come in, like AOC, they come in broke and they leave millionaires. The same is true of the Republicans. They come in broke and they leave millionaires. It's a highly profitable system for these people. So I think you're left with a dilemma. Do you want to bring in people who actually, or arguably, maybe, are interested in working the levers of government to change it into something we would find more consistent with liberty? Or do you just bring in, wrecking machines like Trump, who says he's going to drain the swamp, go to war with everybody? But look how effective he was. I mean, he wasn't really, right? I loved him the first 2 years. Don't get me wrong, but did he really? He didn't drain the swamp, right?
Not
the
at all.
FBI is still there, right?
Yeah.
Everything's still there. And when he really appeared to be threatening, the rest of the government, both parties, were willing to actually destroy the American economy in an outright effort, and they did, obviously, destroy the American economy just to get Trump.
Yeah.
So if you bring in Trump again, I mean, we already hear talk about this Contagion X, right? Are they going to do anything less to get rid of him next time? I mean,
so I have an argument to say that they won't, which is that he's less of a threat because there's no re-election. He's as a lame duck. It's like they know, like, even punishing him. I mean, look, I know they want to send
I think it's more of a threat.
Why? Why is
because I think now he has coattails that he didn't have before. I think now he has guys like Vivek. Is that how you say it?
Vivek, like cake.
Vivek on his coattails. So I think assuming Vivek is who he says he is,
right?
Which,
right.
I don't know.
Right.
But let's pretend that we can be confident he's like a mini me Trump, right?
Right.
You could have 4 years of Trump and then 8 years of Vivek.
Yeah.
That would be horrifying
for the left. Yeah, that's true. That would be horrifying. I'll tell you one of the things that I really liked about Vivek, which I brought this up last night as well, and that is that some of the solutions that he comes up with are basically solutions that he doesn't need congressional approval. We're always hearing all these congressmen make promises about elect me as president, and I'll pass this law, I'll do this, I'll do that, and they're all things that you can never get past Congress if you're going to have an obstructionist type of Congress. And you have to assume that you're going to have an obstructionist Congress. It's rare that you end up having a majority in both houses. Certainly not enough of a super
Although
majority.
Trump did.
Yeah, that's true. But you're not going to, even that, you're not going to have a super majority in the Senate that you can get past filibuster.
It's not a real, it's right. It's not a real majority.
Right.
You have guys like Romney on there. They're not really Republicans.
Right. Right. So because of that, what I liked about Vivek is that he looked at the Constitution and said, okay, here are the powers that the executive holds alone, and here are the policies I'll enact to effectuate an America First type policy that even if I don't need congressional approval to cut the FBI. I can just fire them all. And I can reassign people.
But do you believe he would do that? So that's the trouble with Vivek for me, is he says all the right things. So he's saying everything. If George Washington, our founding father, were saying these things, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's go, George.
Right.
But Vivek is so new on the scene politically and such a smooth talker that it feels like I went to Best Buy and I want to buy a stereo system, and they're selling me a $15,000 stereo system, when really all I need is a turntable with a couple boxes on the side, right?
Yeah.
So I feel, and
there's a used car salesman vibe. There is.
Right. And so I feel like I'm being gamed. I feel not rationally, but because he's never done anything to me to deceive me, but emotionally, I just feel like I'm in that used car salesman lot and I'm being talked into the floor mats and the rust proofing that I really don't need, but it's doubling the price of the car. And I wonder if the guy is smart enough that he knows what he needs to say to win, even though he doesn't mean it.
He does. Right. He definitely seems like he is that smart. He seems
so
like
I get that vibe. And again, I don't know the guy personally, so I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my feeling about him.
And that is, and you're far from alone. I think most people get that feeling from him. The counter I make to that is, okay, so what do you think? He's going to rip off his mask and you're going to see it's really Obama? Like, what do you think is going to, like, what do you think we're going to get? Are we going to get someone as bad as Nikki Haley? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if the mask were to come off, what would we get? And I said, at the very least, he understands what we want enough to tell us that, as opposed to these other candidates, which can't even figure out what we want. So when it comes to an issue like, there's a new federal indictment of their political opponent, he at least knows to say, this is wrong. And if he's off the ballot, I'm not going to be on the ballot. He knows what we want to hear, as opposed to these other schmucks who can't even figure that out to pretend that they know that they'll do the right thing.
Fair enough. But that, to me, Joe, that sounds like I have like 6 enemies who want me dead, and 5 of them are retards and can't figure out what to say to fool me. And one of them is smart enough to figure out what to say to fool me. It doesn't make him not my enemy.
True.
He's just smarter than the other ones.
True.
And I'm not saying that's Vivek. Am I saying it right now?
Vivek.
Jesus Christ. Why can't he be called? I'm just going to call him Jeff from now on. But
all right.
I mean, I don't know that's the guy's. That's what he's thinking. I don't know what's in his soul or in his head, but he comes across sometimes as so just kind of smooth and slick. And by the way, Trump does too, but it's got a different vibe. When you hear it from Trump, obviously Trump's talking shit half the time he's talking. But you feel like he's talking shit on your side.
Right.
And for some reason with Vivek, you feel like he's talking shit, like he's trying to sell you something. And I can't pin down exactly what the difference is, but
I'll tell you something that I realize about a distinction between them. It's not just the fact that he comes across as being smarter than you. I don't mean you individually. I'm saying is he comes across as if like he's used to being the smartest person in the room. But it's also when he's defining things like about how his plans for how he's going to do something, he gets very detailed about it in ways that Trump is, I think, either intentionally or not, very vague. You ask Trump what he's going to do about the war in Ukraine. He's like, I'll go in.
He's going to do something awesome. He's going to do something incredible.
I'll go in there.
It'll be amazing.
I'm going to talk to Putin. I'm going to talk to Zelensky.
And by the way, when he does it, it works. It works, right? Under Trump, there were no wars.
We'll work something out, and no one's going to die, and it'll happen very quickly. And you're like, yeah, okay, I can see that happening. As opposed to like, as opposed to
the fancy plans that, right? It sounds like a very academic, like someone just graduated college and they have all the solutions to the world and they're very detailed and they're very expert. And of course, they completely explode into fire the moment they're implemented. Trump's just like, you know what? I'm just going to fix it. I'm just going to fix it. And I'm going to shake hands and I'm going to make deals and everything will be fine and we'll all be happy and no one has to die.
Yeah.
And for the first 2 years of his presidency, that's exactly
really
what
works.
happened.
It really works. And part of it is that I think, I really think that other world leaders are terrified of Trump. They're like, I don't know what that guy's going to wake up tomorrow, be mad at me and bomb me. So if he wants something from me, I'm going to listen. And I think even Putin is a little bit scared of Trump. But Trump is smart enough to, like, he's not going to say, that he's scared of me, because that just makes that'll get Putin's back up. But I think it's pretty clear Putin did nothing for 4 years that Trump was in office.
Trump had an interesting technique he always used. He would say, so who's the leader of North Korea? I always get his name, Kim Il-jung, whatever. Yeah. Kim, I'll call him Kim. He would say, North Korea, they're terrible. They're awesome. I'm prepared to bomb them at a moment's notice. But Kim, he's a great guy. He's a great leader. He'd do the same thing with Russia. He'd say, like, Russia, they're terrible. They're engaged in all kinds of human rights crimes. They're terrible. But Putin's the guy I could deal with. So he would denigrate the country in general, but he would praise the leader as a peer, as someone he could talk to and negotiate with. And what would happen is those leaders would come to him and say, all right, let's talk. And that's why he had that handshake across the border with the North Korean Kim.
I can so relate to that, because that's instinctively what litigators do.
It's gaming, right? That's what we do.
That's what litigators always do. Whenever we're talking about the other side in front of a judge, we're really, really talking about the other attorney, because the client doesn't know what the hell is happening with strategy and different things that they do. But the way you phrase it is, that you'll say that the plaintiff is so obstinate and difficult in the way he tries dealing with anything, and my learned counsel over here will argue that it's totally okay. But
you're denigrating the opposing
you denigrate the client
party, right? But the lawyer you treat with the utmost respect.
Precisely. Right? That's exactly how we do it. It's like, you'll refer to it as like, my learned counsel. Even when you get mad at them and you're furious at that person in a deposition, you never call them a-hole. You say counselor instead. It's like, well, that might be your position, counselor.
Right. Even when your intent is to destroy their client, to hundreds of millions of dollars,
or them personally, because you're so angry at them, but you still will be. You still never actually. It's a more effective way of getting what you want. It's a more effective way.
I've gone to lunch with opposing counsel. It's like, hey, let's go to lunch. Let's have a good time. And I wanted to. If I could have dropped a meteor on those guys, I might have done it, but that wasn't an option. So I had to play it smarter than that and just pretend to like them.
All right.
But it got me a very good outcome.
Next story I want to share with you is this one right here. Michelle Obama angling to replace Joe Biden for president.
Are we still not calling her Michael? We're not doing that yet.
We're going to come to this story. I just wanted to drop that headline on you that we're going to be covering that next. Let me just cover a couple of super chats that popped in here before we do that. So last night on the following program says, "Yo, Joe, today's show you laughing at DeSantis made over 2,000 views." This guy started a channel called Last Night on the Following Program. So he'll take something that I say on a show, and the next day he'll turn it into a short. And I haven't figured out how to get him to work for me for free yet. But this is the closest thing I have. So every once in a while, I'll pimp him out. Does great work.
If it works for you, pass him on to me.
The guy's amazing. He's awesome. And you guys check him out. What he basically does is he takes my 2 hours and finds the best 45 seconds out of it and throws it into a short. Alligan News says Joe is officially member of press, which we are all part of, but court said he is now the better man. Oh, there you go. NRA has big shakeup. Maybe they'll finally get back on defending gun rights.
Do you know about this?
No.
All right. So as a lifelong NRA life benefactor member, so more even than a life member, I've been a life member of the NRA forever. The president of the NRA has been a guy called Wayne LaPierre forever, for decades. I remember last time I saw Wayne LaPierre in person, I was at a big NRA event. Anyway, he came walking through the room wearing a $10,000 suit, which I know what that looks like because I own a $10,000 suit. It's a very expensive suit, drunk as a fucking skunk, staggering all over the room. This is the guy who makes all the political and legal and financial decisions for the NRA. No one knows how he gets elected. I say this as an NRA Life member who votes every year for the NRA board. I have no idea how Wayne LaPierre gets retained every year. What his compensation is, I have no idea. He was there for decades, and that the NRA would take credit relentlessly for every Second Amendment court win that was won by other people. The NRA would take credit for. They had nothing to do with any of those. Not with Bruin, not with McDonald, not with Heller. The NRA did nothing to help those cases except take credit afterwards. I stopped giving them money decades ago. But now Wayne LaPierre is leaving the NRA, probably because he's alcoholic hepatitis. Who knows? Anything could be possible. But the question is, now will the NRA become a different organization because he is leaving? Was he like the corrupt tumor at the leadership of the NRA? And I hate to tell people, but my expectation is that the answer is no, that he was representative of a team of tumors at the head of the NRA, and that some other tumor will step into his role and continue the corruption of that organization that's been happening forever. I'd like to be proven wrong.
Well, in what way would you deem the NRA to be corrupt, aside from taking credit for court victories?
There's no control. So, like a normal corporation, you have you have stockholders, right? Those might be NRA members with voting rights. And then you have a board. The stockholders elect the board. And then you have the board elects executives, right? The CEO, the COO to run the organization. The NRA pretends to be structured that way. So I'm a voting member of the NRA. And I elect members to the board. And every board member I've ever spoken to has told me, listen, I'm a member of the board, but I actually have no control over whether Wayne LaPierre is the president or who's controlling the finances, or what financial disclosure is made. So it's a ruse. It's structured like it was a traditional corporation, but it's not run like that. It's run like a mafia organization.
So where do they get their money from, though?
Donation? The members. They have, I don't know, 14, 20 million members who pay $25 a month to, it's a lot of money.
Mm. Wow. All right, Monk in Training says, happy birthday, Ron Ben Shishim Lezikno, which means 60-year-old is considered elderly. My Rosh Yeshiva, which is the head of the yeshiva, told me you don't have to worry about kares. Kares is excommunication, like on a metaphysical plane. So there is a concept that that's kares means having like your life cut off. Excommunication, like your life cut off. So
cancel culture.
Well, yeah, but it's not cancel culture. It means like cut off like on a metaphysical sense from God. Okay. All right. So basically the point is that they say someone who reaches 60 is no longer subject to that punishment from God. I'm 7 minutes behind. Congrats on the press pass. Thank you so much. Wellesley says VP Kash Patel. Who do you think would be a good VP?
For me?
Trump? Yeah.
Now I have to say his name again. If I had to pick, I would go with Vivek. Yeah.
You want Jeff?
No, I would like Vivek. I think if Vivek actually demonstrated himself because he's never been elected to anything, right? Of course, Trump hadn't either, right? Mm-hmm. But I think if Vivek served as VP for 4 years and kind of didn't do anything crazy, like open up a 7-Eleven in the White House or something.
Are you saying because he's French?
Yeah.
And all the French people own 7-Elevens?
All those baguettes. No, honestly, I have a lot of respect for the guy. He's obviously a hugely successful business person. And if he can enter politics at this level and serve 4 years as VP and not F stuff up, yeah, I'd be a lot more comfortable with him being president 4 years from now.
Yeah, I actually think I was painting him for chief of staff type of role because I think he's so good with the different ideas he's come up with.
He's too smart for that.
I think he could be great as a chief of staff. I don't think a VP does enough. I was actually yesterday I threw out the name Ted Cruz for VP.
What chief of staff has ever become president? Nobody.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
So he's looking at that. He's looking at the golden ring, right? So chief of staff is not going to be attractive to him.
Perhaps. That's a fair point. I think that Trump would be afraid to have him around because he's too charismatic. Like he wouldn't want to hit. I don't think Trump likes having his limelight taken away from him. I think Mike Pence was the perfect dead fish for him.
That could be, and that would be a weakness of Trump as the president of the United States.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, Trump sucks at picking people. He does. Yeah. He's terrible. Well. I mean, there's talk about him potentially picking Nikki Haley for vice president, and if he does that, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to reassess whether or not I'm going to vote for the dude. That's how
so. I don't care. I don't care about how people talk about who knows, but I will say this: Trump has not been successfully running $1 billion enterprise for his whole life because he sucks at picking people. I think when he became president, he became so demonized that it became impossible for him to go through the normal process of picking competent people, because anyone he would choose knew they were going to be demonized by the press relentlessly. Their children would be demonized getting into Ivy League schools. Their wives would be demonized going to the normal, whatever, slut fest at Vegas, whatever those wives do. So Trump found himself extremely constricted on who he could pick. And by the way, you have to hire people, especially when you're the first time you've ever been president. You're hiring people.
Thousands.
The normal people won't be employed by you, right? The normal swamp people won't be employed by you. So by definition, you're hiring people who've never been in the job before. Mm-hmm. You don't actually know if they're going to be any good. And so the best you can hope for is not that you're not going to make any mistakes in hiring people. The best you can hope for is that when they turn out not to work, you'll fire them quick.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So you have to kind of assume you're going to make a lot of mistakes hiring, but you'll be efficient in firing. The trouble with Trump is he made a lot of mistakes hiring, and then COVID hit 2 years later, just about the time you would be identifying people to fire.
It's an interesting thought that I
and just about the time you've been demonized by the press for 2 years.
Right.
So when you go to fire people, who the F are you going to replace them with? No one wants to work with you. You are Hitler.
Right. Right. Zachary Sweet says, I feel like Trump needs someone to break down his grand ideas and explain them in a way everyone can understand them. Trump is a master showman, but struggles to break ideas down logically. Vivek is great at that, which that paints him almost as a press secretary. And people do go on to greater careers after press secretary. You see Sarah Huckabee, who's another person I think is a potential vice president.
What was she elected to?
Governor of Arkansas.
Okay, so it's Arkansas.
I mean, I know it's Arkansas. I know it's Arkansas, but still, governor is like, king of your domain. So that's not small. And I think that's a big enough win that he. And
her father was governor there first, right?
I think so. Yeah,
he was.
But my point is that it's still.
The trouble is, I don't think Trump was great at policy. I think he was great at sentiment. I think he was great at kind of an emotional approach to politics. And I don't just mean great. I mean, he was a fucking Superman at that approach to politics. I mean, he prevented war for years over the globe when we'd been a forever war nation, and immediately returned to being a forever war nation. So I'm not diminishing his power in that sense, but it's not like he's not like a detailed policy guy.
No, he's not a detailed policy guy.
Like Vivek would be, right? Vivek would be like, no, interest rates have to be this percent, and we need this percentage of people to go to college or whatever, the kind of crap he would make up himself. But Vivek would be much more detailed and concrete than Trump would ever be. Trump would be like, this is terrible, and we have to fix this, and we will fix this, and everyone, a chicken in every occasional pot. That's the Trump approach. Vivek he'd have a spreadsheet.
Right. Right. I will say this, though. He did implement policies like that were some phenomenal policies. Like
I'm not saying they don't work. They work. Those general policies work, but it's a different flavor of governance than we would expect from Vivek.
Right. That's definitely true. But I mean, just to give you an example, like he had his First America policy with pharmaceutical companies, where he said you have to charge Americans whatever the lowest for each drug, whatever the lowest rate is that you charge any foreign country for that drug. And instantly, overnight, that changed the price of insulin for diabetics from $600 a month to $60 a month. And who does that help the most? That actually helps the Black community, because they have a high incidence of of diabetes. And the
You're
day
such a racist.
I'm just realistically,
no,
there's
no, of course, you're telling the absolute truth. Of course.
but the day on January 20th, 2021, before he laid his head on the pillow after being sworn in, Biden ripped up that EO because it had Trump's name on it, and he spent the last 3 years trying to figure out how to fix the crisis of the cost of pharmaceuticals. So because he had to rip it up. Why? Because there's Trump's freaking name on it. It's like it was so childish. And who suffered for it? The black community is the one who suffered for it more than anyone. I mean, if you're wealthy, you don't care if your drugs.
Who suffers from Democrat policies more than the black community?
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been convinced that the Democrats, of course, were in the South during the Civil War. I think that the Democrats have always been angry that the Republicans took their slaves away from them, and they've always wanted their slaves back. And
speaking of Democrats causing the black community to suffer, I don't know if you saw this. I want you to watch this. Check this out. This was did you see this?
No.
So this is they're debating over HR2, which is basically designed to try to crack down at the border. And here's a Democrat here who's weighing in with Maxwell Frost from Florida. He's weighing in with his proposal. Check this out.
Violent acts we've seen.
Oh, sorry. Put this on regular speed.
Absolutely. So I just hosted a roundtable in my district because my constituents are terrified about the talk that's going on up here. An amazing community leader and pastor, Father Jose, brought up a really good point that migrants don't just want to come here. We told them to come here. And Mr. Beer, the Statue of Liberty, situated next to Ellis Island, an iconic.
Oh, look, he has someone holding up a picture of the Statue of Liberty. That's
your huddled masses.
They're all like that's every Zoomer politician is like that. They love having some idiot hold up a sign behind them.
Send us your huddled masses, like that's federal law for immigration purposes.
But hold on, listen to what this schmuck says.
Of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tepid toss to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. To my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, let's be honest with immigrants who deserve better than what you're offering them. Don't welcome immigrants if you plan to reject them. If you keep pushing your bigoted HR2 bill, then also pass this bill. I've taken the liberty of drafting it for you. It removes the Statue of Liberty, our largest symbol that tells people to come here. This is who you are, removing the fabric of America.
It's like an ad-libs book.
Listen, you see, really the schmuck?
Sports and voted for HR2 will introduce this bill.
Yeah, but Joe, these are the people who are winning the country. I hate to say it. Listen, I know you're
astonishing.
I've been watching these guys for decades, and they're winning.
It's astonishing.
They're winning. We've had what 10 to 20 million military-age men come across the southern border. And by the way, for folks who don't know, when they do the census for congressional districts, they don't count citizens in the district for who's going to be elected a congressman. They count human beings. So when they let in 20 million illegal immigrants across the border, and they all are populated, how do you think AOC gets elected? How do you think those other broads get elected? We put these human beings who themselves are not legally allowed to vote. Of course, we know they do, but what they are allowed to do is vote in a census, and that gives them a population count for a congressman in Congress. So guess what? Your congressperson that is competing against other Congress people in Congress is actually selected by people who are illegal immigrants into the United States. You have lost your country, folks. Sorry. I know you didn't know it yet. Because
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about like what's fair. And to me, what seems fair is we should have a 3/5 compromise on illegal aliens. So
yeah.
Don't you think that makes a lot of sense to have a 3/5 compromise? That, yeah. I'm sure that's probably gonna be clipped. So Project Com says dictators are also bad on strategy and resourcing. Their advisors couldn't explain that the deal with Trump was extremely one-sided. I don't know what that means. The deal with Trump was extremely one-sided, but I don't know which deal with Trump he means.
Dictators are not always bad on strategy. FDR was not bad on strategy in the war. He was pretty good on strategy. Hitler was bad on strategy in the war, but FDR was not.
Monk in Training says, FYI, Trump personally threatened to bomb Putin's house. Showed him a satellite photo after threatening to bomb Moscow if they invaded Ukraine.
But did he do it?
No, that's the point.
That's the point.
That's exactly the point. And Monk in Training is supporting that. He's saying like that's how you reel in a dictator. Is he's like, hey, look, this is your house. That we have a gun, we have a bomb that's trained on your house. So
that's like the perfect act of self-defense. So you're become the victim of an armed robber. A dude walks up with a gun, says, "Give me your money," and you pull out your own gun and pull it at his face, and he walks away. Yeah. You won that fight. You won that fight. You don't have to shoot him. You won that fight.
It's like Crocodile Dundee. That's not a
knife. Not a knife.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's get to this story here before I get to the next super chat, which I teased earlier, and that was the Michelle Obama angling to replace Joe Biden for president. An article by New York Post legendary gossip columnist Cindy Adams reports Barack and Michelle Obama are angling to replace Biden, with former First Lady Michelle as the Democrats' 2024 presidential nominee. Obama world was rocked when Donald Trump short-circuited the Obama revolution to remake America when he defeated would-be Obama successor Hillary Clinton in 2016, has taken merciless revenge on President Trump ever since. Barack Obama is thought by many to be the behind-the-scenes power of the Biden presidency, but with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris having some of the worst polling numbers for incumbents seeking a second White House term and Trump leading Biden in most polls, it appears the Obamas are quietly laying the groundwork for Michelle to step in and save the Obama revolution. Adams reports Michelle Obama has surveyed Dem Biggies, which I don't know if that's the name of if that's a rap artist or whatever, but after her potential candidacy, about her potential candidacy, and in 2022 reportedly told a gathering of CEOs in New York City she was running. Gossip, rumor, or trial balloon leaks to gauge public support and Democratic reaction. So late baby boomer Michelle, who turned 60 on Wednesday, is a generation younger than pre-boomer, a dementia-addled 81-year-old Biden. And Michelle made a headlines earlier this month, a podcast interview in which she said, things that keep me up because you don't have control of them. And you wonder, what are people that we are also, where are we in this? You know, where are our hearts? What's going to happen in this next election? I'm terrified what could possibly happen because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us, who holds that bully pulpit.
Can you scroll back to her mansion? Because we're such a racist country.
Yeah, seriously.
that she's got a $50 million mansion on the water. I mean,
the things that keep me up because you don't have control over them.
Mm-hmm. It's like what Hitler did to the Jews, right? He gave them all $50 million mansions on the ocean.
Precisely. I know that.
Our hearts. What's going to happen in this next election? I am terrified about what could possibly happen because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us, who holds that bully pulpit. It affects us in ways that sometimes I think people take for granted.
So there you go.
Is that a Viagra bottle right next to her?
so my question for you is, A, do you think she's going to run? And B, if she did, what do you think? How do you think that would go for the GOP?
I don't know, Joe. I'm old enough. I saw Bill Clinton run, and I thought he was the biggest fake I've ever seen in my life. I couldn't believe anybody would even buy a car from that guy, and he got elected twice. And then I saw Obama run, and I thought, who the hell could ever elect this guy? I mean, he's obviously a fraud on every dimension, and he got elected twice. So I've stopped making political predictions. I don't pretend. You know, one of the most shocking moments of my life was when I realized, and I don't remember what election cycle it was, but I realized that. So my first president I voted for was Ronald Reagan. And I realized in a later election cycle that fully half the country was not voting age at the time I was voting for Reagan. So they were voting age now, but they didn't live through Jimmy Carter. They didn't live through the Cold War. They didn't live through Ronald Reagan. So their view of the world was just completely different than mine.
Right.
And so it shouldn't surprise me when they voted for a shitbag like Clinton or a shitbag like Obama. But they do. So I don't know what to predict. I can tell you what I would predict people like me would vote for, but the general public, they're a bunch of dummies. I don't know what they're going to do.
I'll tell you right now, God forbid if she runs, I don't see anyone in the GOP who would beat her. Not Trump, not anyone.
You mean Michelle Obama?
Yeah. I think that she's so I think that the same way, what I've said about Trump is that he is a very polarizing figure who brings out the votes for and against.
He's polarizing because he's effective.
Yeah.
That's why you attract the flock, right? Because you're over the target.
Okay, but I'm not saying in a negative way. I'm just telling you it's not a positive or negative. I'm just saying he just is.
I agree.
Total number of votes in the 2024 election will be increased by 10%. And whether it's an increase in favor of the GOP or against the GOP is difficult to know, because he rallies the right to come out and he rallies the left to come out and vote against him. So because he's just very electrifying. And I think that, God forbid, if she decides to run, that will electrify the left to come out in ways that they otherwise would not be nearly as electrified by Joe Biden or anyone else, or Gavin Newsom.
So for all the pro Second Amendment people out there, if a Democrat wins election next time around, all your Second Amendment rights are done. They are done. These Bruin, Heller, McDonald decisions, they are immediately reversed by a politically elected Sotomayor type Supreme Court. So I hope you enjoyed them, because if a Democrat wins, you are finished.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, how much longer are we going to have Justice Thomas? How much longer? He's already right now. He's served on the Supreme Court. His duration on the Supreme Court is 11th longest in American history. Next year he moves, or I heard that within 2 years, he moves into the top 5 all time for how long he served. And in 3.5 years, if he's still serving at that point, he will be the longest serving justice in American history. So that just shows you how long in the tooth he is.
And we're resting a fundamental civil right on one dude.
I mean, Bruin was 6'3", I think, but yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like this.
So 6 people. It's a bad plan, right? Listen, if the question was, are these people going to shove you into an oven, and 6 people were what was keeping you from being shoved into an oven, you'd say that was a bad plan, right?
Yeah. And by the way, it's not like Alito's a kid either. So, and they're easily the 2 most based members of the court. The replacements that Trump put in there, Gorsuch is okay, but he's not an Alito or Thomas. And Barrett and Kavanaugh are your classic neocon type of institutionalist Republicans.
Right. You have a right to own guns, but it's not that much of a right. I mean, it's not just about guns. It's like, we trust the government. They're very into, like, the government is here to help the people type of naivete, and our institutions have to be maintained strong. That's why Kavanaugh comes out and says, yeah, the Constitution doesn't really allow you to write these COVID laws, but it's just another month. so well, of course, the whole purpose of the Bill of Rights was because the founders recognized the government was the enemy. That's why all the Bill of Rights are constraints on the government. They're not positive rights for the people. They're constraints on the government, because the government is the enemy.
Yeah. Well, Kimmy Hunt claims that Barnes says Michelle won't run. That's a red herring. She hates working and people. If the DNC replaces Biden in the convention, it'll be Hillary. I would not be worried about Hillary. I think he's wrong about Hillary. I think Gavin Newsom.
Hillary's as hated as Trump is.
I don't think they're ever going to bring Hillary. I don't think they're ever going to try Hillary again, because they recognize that she was so unpopular that I don't think it'll be Hillary. I think Gavin Newsom. If it's not Michelle Obama, I think it's going to be Gavin Newsom. But I don't think it's going to be Biden. I don't think Biden's going to make it. I think I think they're terrified of having him.
Is he alive now?
It's what I'm saying is, it's so
one
easy.
Of those Disney animatronic.
They can 25th Amendment him anytime they want. Like anytime they want. And
imagine if that was Trump acting like that.
Yeah, seriously. We never hear the end of it. Definitely Rand Paul for VP. What do you think about that? Would you like him for VP?
No, I don't trust any of those old Republicans. I think they're all.
He's very libertarian. Rand Paul. So
Yeah, no.
Master Phillips says the Statue of Liberty baguettes never mentioned that you showed up on our shores back then. You worked or starved. No free government, anything. That's a very important point. It's a very important point that as much as we say, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, it's
in that era we were inviting immigrants. We were saying, come to us. We need your labor. We're not doing that today. You're invading now. There's a difference.
No, it's also come through legally. That's the massive difference. You know, people think that like the Republican Party has like an era of people who are MAGA, which, you know, or ultra MAGA is against immigration. I'm totally fine with legal immigration. We bring in, before your illegal immigrant crisis, we've been bringing in for the last century practically 1 million immigrants a year. And if you don't think that that's a significant number, understand this: no country in history ever did that before, to bring in 1 million immigrants per year. It's crazy how many immigrants we bring in legally. And yeah, when you're able to bring them in and know who they are and process them and understand something about them, rather than having them,
and they have to prove that they are
financially viable
value.
Also. Yeah, precisely.
Because they make themselves productive. Today we just offer them welfare.
Yeah, come in here and we'll give you welfare. Precisely. And that's an unsustainable situation. Let me make sure. So VSync asks, please discuss the Biden administration proposed final rule to impose the disastrous AB5 from California on the whole country, devastating freelancers. Bridget Phatasy was on her Twitter and Walk-ins podcast. Are you familiar with the AB5 from California?
I think what it essentially does is, in California, it says if you're an independent contractor, suddenly you're under purview of the government. They want all their taxes, healthcare, employment, unemployment insurance. They want all this kind of shit from you. Whereas prior to this, if you were an independent contractor, California basically didn't see you. You were invisible to the regulatory framework. I think, frankly, California should enact it. Fuck you, California. Watch all your independent contractors leave your state and come to other states where they can be productive.
So but her point is Biden wants to do that nationally.
Good luck. See what happens. Listen, if America wants a self-end, is that safe for YouTube? Then do that. But we are, whether you like it or not, we're largely a independent contractor economy now. We're Uber drivers, we're independent contractors, we're self-workers, we're Etsy workers, we're whatever you want to call it. We're people who are out there.
We're podcasters.
We're podcasters. We're in the micro economy. We're not working for GM. Okay? We're not working for Edison. We're not working for giant corporations. We're working for micro corporations, which are often just us, one person, two people, micro corporations. That's what we're doing now. If you want to choke that off, you're choking off 50% of your economy. California apparently wants to do that. I'm sure Idaho, guarantee you, Colorado, Tennessee, all these states where you see this wash of California license plates come through, they'll take those people. And those people will be economically productive and contribute to the productivity of those states. If you want to try to crush people in America, it's hard to do because, as they say in Star Wars, the harder you squeeze your fist, the more people will squeeze through.
Yeah, I don't know how they. I don't know how this would get through on a federal level. I mean, it seems like it's such a state-oriented thing. I don't even understand. I don't understand the basis for how that would survive.
The federal government does all kinds of shit that apparently does not fit within constitutional constraints, Joe.
Yeah. This just crush entrepreneurship. Just crush it. That's basically, here are your socialists. There you go. Just crush entrepreneurship. Robin Sage says, Branca, I firmly believe within my lifetime, I'm 40, the whites will be scapegoated for all evils ever and attempt to put us on the trains for showers on the way. You can see it already.
I don't know if that's true or not. You're entitled to your opinion. I would encourage everyone who feels that way to buy a lot of guns.
Did you see that? Did you see that story I was talking about near the beginning of my show involving this guy Bible in Minneapolis? It's right up your alley. I mean, not really right up your alley. It's not really self-defense. This guy, this guy, Damarean Kaylon Bible, walks past a bus stop, and he gets propositioned to engage in an exchange of money for fluids.
All right,
And
got it. Yeah,
when
right.
and after they go into a private courtyard and they wrap things up,
he gets mugged.
worse than that, he notices that the hands seem a little stronger than he anticipated.
I'm sorry, that's not him.
And he proceeds to unload his 9mm into the offender's face, killing them.
Yeah,
and then goes home and tells the cops, admits to the cops that he killed him
because of the wrong gender.
Because basically he didn't realize that it was transgender woman. And
What state was this?
in Minnesota.
Yeah, so about half the states have laws now that say that you can't. They call it. I don't want to. So I'm trying to be careful for your channel, Joe.
I appreciate
it. They reference it, so you can't claim it as a legal defense that the person you thought was a woman turned out to be a dude. That's just. You can that's not a legal offense, and you used to be able to argue that. And frankly, I got to be honest, I'm just as a normal dude, I understand how disturbing it would be to discover that someone you thought was a woman turned out to be a dude. But I also don't think that you should be able to use deadly force on someone because you got tricked by someone who was attracted enough to be a woman. You should have better judgment than that.
Right.
But there were many cases where states would allow people to make that legal argument that there was a kind of a manslaughter effect, a rage effect, right? You were fooled, a heat of passion kind of defense, so it would mitigate murder down to manslaughter. But increasingly, states, Colorado for sure, has passed a law saying that we explicitly exclude that as a legal defense.
And Minnesota, are you aware whether Minnesota allows it?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
I hate. I shouldn't have dropped that on you off the cuff,
but
yeah. So I can totally understand why that should be manslaughter, but you're right. You can't. It's not gonna vitiate that. Like, there's no murder charge at all because. You're not, as I pointed out, I was thinking of you when I was covering this. I was like, there's no imminent bodily, threat to your serious bodily harm or death. So, even if the dude clamps down,
right? You're actually just super mad that a dude finished you, right? Which is, I hate to say it. I know it's going to shock people, but that's not a legal justification to shoot him through the head.
Yeah. So that's the story of Damarean Bible, and
so everyone who has me on as a guest ultimately says, "Well, that was a bad idea."
I don't think it's a bad idea at all. I will tell you, I will tell you that Damarean, it's in Hennepin County, which same place as Derek Chauvin was, and.
Good luck.
I feel bad. Yeah, I feel bad for the guy that he opened his mouth and basically made so many admissions to all these people because he's just going to be sent away for the rest of his life now. They want to charge him with a hate crime.
Yeah, well, he hated BJ's. I mean, is that credible?
No, they're going to say it's a hate crime because he's racist, because he's racist. He's a transphobe. Do you think that should be considered a hate crime if it's against a transphobe who tricked you into engaging in something that you otherwise would not do?
I don't believe in hate crimes. Period.
Okay. Really? No matter what?
Yeah.
Somebody says I need to kill.
No. I think you should be held accountable for what you actually do. I don't think you should be held accountable for what's the imaginary thoughts in your head.
Even if they're not imaginary, but you verbalize them.
I don't know. Make a compelling argument. Give me an example.
Okay, so when someone comes out and said, to a total stranger they never met anymore. You know, I'm sick of all you N-words, and
Right.
you need to be, and we need to get rid of each and every one of you. And he takes the guy and strings him up and hangs him.
Right. So it in my worldview, what I would say is that guy should just be executed. And it has nothing to do with being a hate crime. He killed another human being.
Okay.
So what's the greater punishment than that?
Well, Steve Gosling would come in here screaming.
No, I know, of course, and I love Steve, and he's great, and I understand, and I have my own concerns about capital punishment because I don't trust the government the way
Right.
the way the government is currently constructed. But that doesn't prevent us from thinking about, well, if we had a properly constructed government that you could trust to execute people, and there are people who deserve execution. I think we can all agree on that. There are people who do things heinous enough that death is really the only proper crime, if you could be certain that they had committed those crimes. Then I just think the whole criminal justice system should be much simpler. I think people who served their sentence, for example, felons who served a sentence, should be released and get all their rights back. I think they should be able to vote, own guns, everything. I think they should be normal citizens of society, as long as you can be sure that they're safe to release into society.
Well, what if their term runs, and let's say they were a very violent felon, they had gone out and basically executed someone who was working for, and then they served 20 years and get out. So you think
as a practical matter, someone who served 20 years is very unlikely to be a ongoing threat to the populace. I mean, these tend to be young men crimes. Now, that's different if you're talking. Again, I don't want to get your channel into trouble. PED type of crimes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So those guys never give it up. Doesn't matter how old they are. So
you're
they
talking about people who have twisted attractions towards children.
Yes, right. So those guys should never be released from prison, ever, unless, I guess, if they were physically castrated, maybe.
Which, by the way, I think that they should be, and that would not be cruel and unusual punishment. That would be just.
I think it would be consistent with the founders. I mean, if we listen to the Bruin decision, right, a tradition and history of castration in America, I think that would fit. I'm not sure. Even then, I would trust them because I think some of these
use fingers. What if we take their fingers also?
I think they're so broken there. I think they'd still be dangerous to children, even then. So
do we take their hands and take their? Yeah, they still have a mouth. Yeah. There's.
Right, Joe.
Yeah, Joe. I appreciate you stopping by, brother.
Yeah, I gotta go.
I thank you so much. I don't know how we end up walking down this road, but here we are. So I thank you so much. I'm going to be, by the way, I just want to give you a heads up. January 31st, I'm going to be doing a 24-hour stream. If you can find some time to pop in for like half hour or so, that would be much obliged.
You'll have to remind me.
I will.
Okay.
I will.
All right, man. Take care.
Later, brother. Thank you so much. And I am coming to an end over here as well. I had one or two more things that I didn't get to cover, which I'm going to do quickly.
As a
I
mayor,
managed to sneak in a couple while he was here. Really, actually, as I'm looking at it, there's really just one. Someone mentioned the Department of Labor, and there was a Rumble rant which I got from VSync saying Department of Labor just gets to make a new rule. Tell me how this isn't a major question, just nuke freelancing. Irony is protect contractors, nukes opportunity for disabled minorities, outsiders without an end. Yep. Totally agree with you. So the last thing I really wanted to cover before I wrap up here, there's actually two things. We'll do two things before we wrap up here. The first one involves our old friend Klaus Schwab. It's the bugs. Leo Holman. Elections will soon be a quaint relic of the past, says globalist Klaus Schwab. Let's hear this schmuck.
The technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have
Zach.
an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power.
Predictive power of AI. What is that? What's the predictive power of AI? Tell us, Klaus. Tell us, Klaus. Tell us about its predictive power, because AI is so perfect.
We have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore, because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be.
Oh my gosh. Dude is literally cartoon evil. Cartoon evil. Why do we need to waste time and money with elections? We can predict what people want. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. Wow. Woo. If we're all equal in the law, then why would there be a hate crime enhancements to the same crime? It's a fair question. It's a fair question. It does seem very retributive. Like we want to get our pound of flesh from this guy because we really hate him for being a racist. Right? I mean, that's essentially what it comes across as. It's like some people they just kill people. Others, no, we really hate this guy because he's a racist. It sounds kind of twisted. It does sound kind of twisted. Can't argue with you on that. All right. Last thing I wanted to share with you, because I think this sums up the week. I think this is the perfect thing to close out on. This sums up the week. I'm going to spotlight an individual here who's a very strong supporter of Governor Ron DeSantis. Very strong supporter, has genuine issues with Mr. Donald Trump. Genuine issues. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know if these people realize how bad they make DeSantis look. It's like every time I hear them speak, they just make me. I used to genuinely really like Ron DeSantis, and it's like every time, the more I hear from DeSimps, the more I cannot stand DeSantis. It's like their stupidity gets me angry at DeSantis, and I don't know if that's a fair thing. I wonder what you guys think. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Should we be more resentful of DeSantis because of the DeSimps? I don't know. So here's one DeSimp, a particularly simpy DeSimp. My name is Peter Hyland, goes by Swiss Watch Guy, saying Trump is begging the Supreme Court to rule that presidents have total immunity even for events that cross the line. If we don't, then the authority of the president is gone forever. That would be an interesting argument if it weren't for the fact that America was able to not only survive, but become the greatest, wealthiest, most powerful country in human history without everyone operating under the belief that the president was completely above the law. Like, okay, Trump's view of presidential immunity is really the antithesis of what made America great. Quite the contrary, actually, because for the last 200 years, we kind of all assumed that the president was above the law. We did. Everyone assumed that. That's why they've never been prosecuted for anything. I don't know where this guy is from. What do we need a poll about? Whether it's appropriate to resent DeSantis because of the DeSimps? Did he? Ben gave up on DeSantis? What Trump wrote was, the president of the United States must have full immunity, without which it would be impossible for him or her to properly function. Any mistake, even if well intended, would be met with almost certain indictment by the opposing party. The term and even events that cross the line must fall under total immunity, or will be years of trauma trying to determine good from bad. There must be certainty. Example: you can't stop police from doing the job of strong effective crime prevention because you want to guard against the occasional rogue cop or bad apple. Sometimes you just have to live with great but slightly imperfect. All presidents must have complete and total presidential immunity, or the authority and decisiveness of a president of the United States will be stripped and gone forever. Hopefully, this will be an easy decision. God bless the Supreme Court. So this is also what Peter Heinlein is doing. Henlein. I said Heinlein, but it's Henlein. Peter Henlein is not realizing, if you actually read what he says here, is that the reason we need to give him this immunity is that he's able to do his job, which means that if it's something unrelated to his job, in that case, like let's say he kills a hooker, in that case he wouldn't be having that immunity. His lawyers didn't claim he should have immunity from that type of scenario. So, but over here, the simps, they need to twist what he's saying, which you can clearly vet out what he's saying if you read the logic that he's applying behind it as to how that would work. And that's consistent with how everyone's looked at presidential role for the last 250 years. But no. Like your classic leftist, we're going to have to try and take his technical words and try and twist them into a way where we try and make him sound like he's a crazy person, where he's basically implying that, hey, if I go out and kill a hooker, I have to be scot-free. That otherwise I can't run the country properly. That's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous. So, and this schmuck over here, he's basically saying checks and balances against the executive branch shouldn't exist. No one's saying that. That's got nothing to do with checks and balances. Not at all. It's like these simps, it's like they become so stupid. So stupid. That's not at all what Trump is saying. That's not what do you know what checks and balances are? Do you understand how things work with the congressional, with court review of legislation? You understand how things work with impeachment? Idiot. Checks and balances. But what I wanted to pull up on this guy, there was so much from him. I was just like, wow. This guy. Every tweet is about Trump. They're so triggered. GOP needs to wake up and fast or be destroyed. Trump will lose us Texas if given the opportunity. These are results of the last few presidential elections in the state. 16-9, Trump v. Biden. It's like, yeah, that's all his fault. That's all his fault. Trend should terrify Republicans. Just consider Mitt Romney was able to beat an incumbent Barack Obama, supremely gifted politician, by 16 in Texas, but an incumbent Trump can only beat a 78-year-old Biden by 5 points. Yeah, these simps, by the way, have gone so far that they start attacking Trump for the fact that he says that the election in 2020 was rigged. Because they're like, no, the election 2020 was totally fine. And I'm like, if this is what the simps think, if the simps really think that everything was just totally above board, they're so out in left field. They might as well just sign up as being Lincoln Project jackasses and say that and basically just go on some cry fest tour with Adam Kinzinger, going around the country, basically breaking down and crying over the Capitol Police and how they held strong on behalf of America. And just sit there saying how terrible Trump is, and try winning him votes that way. Maybe that'll work for you. Most beta thing in the world, most amazing thing. And I guess I'm going to close with this thought: Obama kills Americans, gets away with it. Trump causes a moral riot, can never run again based on 14th Amendment. Well, it's not going to hold up, so you don't have to worry about that. And I explained today, by the way, speaking of SCOTUS. Speaking of SCOTUS and Trump, so on Locals today at goodlogic.locals.com, I was breaking down a case of Fisher versus United States. Trump's not on this case. You likely did not hear about this case, but Fisher versus United States is a case involving a J6 defendant who, this is what the J6 defendant did, Mr. Fisher. You want to know what Fisher did? That he was one of these insurrectionists? He listened to Trump at the Ellipse. He came down to stop the steal. This is what he says. Came down to stop the steal. came down to the rally, listened to him at the Ellipse, did not march to the Capitol, got in his car, and he had a friend with him, got in a car, they left. They start leaving D.C. Then he hears that there's a siege on the Capitol. He hears that they broke in to the Capitol, goes to the east gate of the Capitol. All the barricades gone. Gets to the Capitol at 3:35 p.m., 2 hours after the Capitol had been breached. And they show that he had brief interactions with a police officer where a police officer had dropped something, and he helped the police officer by giving him back his thing. At one point, the crowd is pushing back and forth, and he ends up getting pushed into the police line. This is all on video. He gets pushed into the police line along with the crowd. He fell down, and he ends up leaving. He spends a total in the Capitol of 4 minutes. 4 minutes. And one of the charges that he was faced with is 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2, obstruction of an official proceeding. And the argument that he makes, and the interesting thing about that particular statute, is that is one of the statutes that Trump is charged with in the D.C. indictment that Jack Smith has brought against him, where he says that Trump, much like these J6 defendants, obstructed an official proceeding. What's the official proceeding? The counting of the votes inside the Capitol by Congress. So they say, we're translating that 18 U.S.C. 1512, if any time someone does something that interrupts, impedes an official proceeding, that you've broken the federal statutes. And Fisher correctly points out that this statute has never, ever, 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 ever been used for anything unrelated to destroying evidence. That the introduction of these statutes, 1512 and its kin, I think includes 1509, 1510, 1511, these all came out roughly in 2002, shortly after Enron disaster and Arthur Anderson. And Congress was upset about the fact that Enron and Arthur Anderson, when they were facing public scandal, they just started destroying hundreds of thousands of documents which they thought might be incriminating. So what Congress did was they passed a law saying that if you destroy evidence, this is 18 U.S.C. 1512 C1, if you destroy, alter, modify any sort of documents or record that, because for the purposes of trying to impede an official proceeding, meaning a court trial, meaning you're destroying evidence, in that case, you can be found guilty of violating that. That's a violation of the statute. You can face whatever criminal penalties are associated therewith. C2 says otherwise impede an official proceeding. And the question comes down as I break down in my locals, in my local stream, which is goodlogic.locals.com. So what he's appealing to the Supreme Court is saying that the way Judge Pan of the D.C. Circuit Court, yes, the very same Judge Pan who's sitting on the panel with respect to Trump in his Colorado case, and the ability to the ability for him to be kept off the ballot. Excuse me, not the ability kept off the ballot. No, Judge Pan, excuse me, strike that. I think I might have misstated that in my local stream as well. Not the Colorado ballot. No, with respect to whether or not he can face impeachment prior to whether Trump can face criminal charges without being convicted of impeachment. Very same Judge Pan sat on that panel, was the one who issued the underlying decision against this J6 defendant and said, no, this statute, even though it's never, ever, ever, ever been used for anything who wasn't destroying evidence, it can be used for someone who obstructs an official proceeding. We can read it very, very broadly, even though no one ever thought that that's what it meant. I'm good with that. It's pretty unambiguous. It's pretty clear. Anyway, so Judge Pan ruled against Fisher. There were 4 different judges have looked at this, and each of them have come away with a different way of reading this statute and how to understand what the statute is trying to imply with the language of or otherwise obstructing and impeding an official proceeding. Anyway, I break that down in locals and I go through all the different logical arguments. And I think that the reason it's an important case and something you really should know a little bit more about, and it was granted cert by the Supreme Court. The reason this is significant is because in theory, this can knock off some of the charges that are being levied against Trump. If the Supreme Court has granted cert to this case, they will be weighing in on this case and reaching determination. There's a split amongst the different circuits as to how that statute is supposed to be understood and interpreted. There's a split between the DC Circuit Court versus the 4th Circuit versus the 8th Circuit and the 9th Circuit and the 10th Circuit, all of them dealing with how broadly does this 1512 C2 apply. No one's applied it nearly as widely as Judge Pan did. Now, if in fact the Supreme Court agrees with the petitioners, who they've granted cert to, that this was too broad, too liberal a reading of 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2, and that cannot apply to the situation, one would anticipate that at the very least that charge, which has been levied against Trump in the D.C. District Court, will be dismissed. So it's an important decision, which I will be following up on in the future. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention because I think that too few people seem to be aware of it, and it is going to the Supreme Court. And I'm fairly confident the Supreme Court's not going to give it the broad reading. Now, does that mean that the cases against him are going to be dismissed? No. And I should point out, he was charged with violations of 1512 in Florida as well, the Mar-a-Lago case for obstruction over there. However, I don't think that the Fisher case will be nearly as helpful to Trump in the Florida case. And the reason I don't think it's going to be as significant in that case is because that's dealing with something far more on point, where there's a claim that the government is raising against Trump that he was obstructing them and trying to hide documents and things of that nature. That's far more consistent with traditional readings of 18 U.S.C. 1512 than using that statute and applying it to someone disrupting Congress from doing their thing by, I don't know, marching too loudly or screaming or whatever. So anyway, I just wanted to mention to you that I had gone through that, and I think that you who have not yet had a chance to see it, I recommend you check it out because I think you're going to. I think it's not just timely, but it's an important case which we're going to be hearing more about in the very near future. Tomorrow, I'm going to be on Laid Back Law at noon. If you want to know where to find me, you want to get all the dirt on me, goodlogic.locals.com. Speaking of which, fairly soon, a lot of you have yelled at me that I haven't gotten merch. I'm like this close. I sat down with one of you fine people in the audience who does this sort of thing, and I think I'm going to have merch like within the next week or so. Merch is coming. Yeah. Anyway, so be on the lookout for that. I'm going to announce it first. When it comes out, I'm going to announce it first on Locals. So it's at goodlogic.locals.com. I am wrapping up for the week. I hope you enjoyed yourselves and that your weekend is going to be phenomenal. Top level, grade A, bananas, awesome. And I'm going to kick you out the door over to my good friend Nick Ricada. That's my show for tonight. I thank you all so much for joining me, being a part of my life, part of my world, peeking in on me. And I will tell you to make sure, no matter how bad life's treating you, no matter how rough things get, and I know it gets rough. Life is a struggle. Don't let it get you down. Be happy. Eat the bugs. And as always, Godspeed.